I can hear it. Go adamant and about it. Yeah, we definitely know about it. Good morning. Today is November 17th, 2022. The time is 10:02 a.m. This is the duly called meeting of the Texas Low-Level Radioactive Waste Disposal Compact Commission. I am Chairman Brandon Hurley. Here today, we have with us the Vice Chairman, John Salzman, Commissioner Samana Nayak, our Executive Director, Stephen Rains, Commissioner Mundy, Commissioner Morris, excuse me, and I'm going to see if Lisa pays any attention. She's not looking at me. And all of our other commissioners are here. So we have a full we have a full attendance today. Our Vermont commissioners are online. For everyone, to make sure we are technically sound, if everyone here, if you will make sure that you mute your audio. Obviously, the commissioners in Vermont, please leave your audio on so we can hear you. When you are speaking, please make sure you have your microphone in front of you on, because that is the only way people online can hear us. If you are participating online, if you have a desire to speak, if you will use the raise your hand function, which as you hover down at the bottom of the screen, there will be an option to do that. I will try to recognize you as quickly as possible, but that will be the only way we can keep things orderly. We're here today for our regularly called meeting, and a quorum is present based on my previous comments, so we can proceed with our agenda. I do not believe we are sparsely attended here in person today. I appreciate everyone joining us online, but I do not believe we have any elected officials in the audience, but we see a lot of familiar faces. We appreciate you coming. One of the best lawyers I ever had the chance to work with happens to be joining us today too, and Andrew Weber, so we appreciate his attendance, and Dwayne McLean from Veolia, which we appreciate him traveling in. We see online that we have our friends from TCEQ who include Commissioner Janeka and some of his staff, so we appreciate your attendance. We see Dan Schrum, who is our Executive Director of the forum, with us. Other than that, are there any other elected officials or members of the media that are online with us today? Seeing none. We can move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is our general public comment period. As a reminder, we will allow public comment on all of our listed items on our agenda. However, if there is a matter of general public comment you would like to make, again, please use the raise your hand function, or if you're here in person, please approach the podium. Seeing no hands raised, I think that means there is no public comment. So with that, I would like to actually alter the agenda a little bit. Before we get to the applications that are item 5, I would like to take our committee reports briefly, because it's been suggested, and I think rightfully so, that in some instances, committee reports may potentially have an impact on our consideration of applications. So with that, I would like to jump to item number 7 in our agenda, which is the Rules Committee report. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Morris, I should have given you a warning about this. But I think we can start with item number 7, and I'll turn it over to Linda Morris, who's the chairman of our Rules Committee.
Thank you. We have some good news. We are in the process. We have the 675-31 tax 675.20 and 0.21 were published in the Texas Register on October 14th. The 30-day comment period closed on Sunday, I believe, this past Sunday. There were no comments received. So what we would like to do today is make a recommendation to the Compact Commission that these 2 rules be adopted. So is there any comment from the other commissioners?
Any questions? Any question about the recommendation to move forward with final adoption of the limited rules that we have before us? As a reminder, this is not the management rule. These are only the rules other than the management rule, which include some definitions and some minor issues on other things. But are there any questions for Chairman Morris? Seeing none, I think we can then move on to a motion from the Rules Committee.
Yes, a motion is made to adopt 31 Texas Administrative Code Sections 675.20 and 675.21 as published in the Texas Register on October 14th.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about the motion to adopt the rules as stated? As a quick reminder, the Administrative Procedures Act process this is the last step in that process before adoption. We have gone through public comment, we've gone through informal comment, and this will be the last action taken on these particular rules. So any other questions of the Rules Committee?
Will we be publishing the preamble that was circulated with this?
I believe so. That's something we generally leave up to our Attorney General representative, but we have worked with the Attorney General's office to prepare that. So if there's any comment on that, obviously you can, now would be an appropriate time.
No,
Or
it's just a question. That's the way it works.
yes, and the preamble is obviously not part of the rules, but it is part of the publication of the rules. So thanks for clarifying that. Any other questions? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion made by the Rules Committee to adopt the rules as stated, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes.
I have another update.
Okay, and that was my next question.
Okay,
So
yes. So an update to 31 tax 675.24, the import, the management rule. We are in the final process. We're making some more changes in those rules. John Salzman and I have worked on that. We're preparing a draft to submit to the Rules Committee. So when that draft is finished, we'll be submitting it to the Rules Committee, and from there, moving forward. So we'll have an update on that at our January meeting.
and I want to once again thank the Rules Committee, and I also want to thank the representatives from WCS who met with the Rules Committee to go over some of these changes. I think it's been a productive process, and I think it's going to lead to a better final rule. So we appreciate everybody's participation. Again, I will encourage everyone in the audience and anyone who listens to this later that anyone can still make comments on the rule. It has not even been, it's still in the informal comment period, and the new version will be published on the website. So whenever we will send out a Weber notification about that. So if anyone wants to make comments on the revised rule on an informal basis, you will have the opportunity to do that as well.
I just want to add too, I do appreciate the input from all of our stakeholders. So all of you to not only the management rule, but also to the definitions and the export rule.
Thank you. With that, we are through item 7. We can move on to item 8. And again, I'm sorry, Lisa, because I didn't ask you before the meeting. Is there anything to report from the Capacity Committee?
There's nothing new to report from the Capacity Committee.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 9, which is a Contingency Plan Committee who has been meeting, and I will turn it over to Chairman Mundy, who is the chairman of that committee.
Thank you.
Would you turn on your mic too? I don't know which one you want to turn on, but.
All right. That working?
Yeah.
Okay. When we met in Andrews, we received updated information on volumes of the actual capacity as utilized of the facility or the cell as built out. And that caused us to start looking at the question about how that fits against our legal statutory limits. And Chairman Hurley and I are lawyers, kind of our volunteer legal staff, along with our AG's assistants. And so it came up for a contingency plan. Do we need to update our contingency report to send some sort of update to the legislature and governor's office? Our statutes make very clear that the facility is to be utilized 70% for in-compact generators. That means Texas and Vermont, and that 30% can be utilized for out of compact. So when we're granting import authorizations, we're doing that against that 30% statutory allocation. We don't make that up. That's the legislature long ago in the organic statutes made that ratio of 70-30. So we've received an updated report this week from WCS, which I thank y'all for that, of the current actual utilized amount of space is 270,000 cubic feet, 450,000 that's built out and usable at this time. That is 60% actually utilized right now. At the Andrews meeting, we approved one single application for 80,000 cubic feet, and there was some dialogue, and I remember asking questions, is this quote a real ask? And was told, yes, it's 12 real shipments. If those 12 shipments or that 80,000 cubic feet really came in, that would be 77% of utilized capacity of what's actually built. So looking at our statutes, the contingency committee starting to look at this question of, are we on a short-term situation where we may need to start considering how we allocate for out of compact, making sure we reserve the space for the needs of the in compact folks, particularly the two power plants, since they're the large volume users. This would be a temporary type scenario until there's a build out expansion of the facility, and it's just a generalized issue that we're looking at. So the idea is we'll probably do an updated contingency report to send to the ledge and the governor's office on that.
Thank you very much. Not to sound too preachy, but this is a good point to remind everyone that the primary mission of this commission is to protect capacity for our in-compact generators. That's the reason we regulate the import of out-of-compact waste. So this is an important, if not the most important issue that we face. And so I'm glad that Commissioner Mundy and the capacity committee are working on these issues. And quite frankly, we've never had to address this before because it's never been an issue. But as things progress, and these are good problems to have because this means the facility is being used. But as things progress, this will be an issue that becomes more and more important to us and obviously to all of the relevant stakeholders.
And I want to add one extra thought. When we consider these applications from out of compact, there's some kinds of applications like a driver license, a license to carry a handgun. Texas are what we call shall issue standards, where if the applicant checks all the boxes, meets the standards, the state is required to issue that license, permit, whatever it may be. When we're considering these applications from out of compact, these are not shall issue standards. It is solely at the discretion of the commission. And as the chairman said, our highest number one priority is to assure that our in compact folks, Texas and Vermont, have their needs met. If there's room left over, then out of compact folks can have access.
And so with that, let me also encourage everyone. I'm sure this is a topic on which many of you have opinions and maybe even information that you think may be helpful to us. So please feel free to contact Stephen, contact Commissioner Mundy, contact me with your thoughts on this. This impacts really everybody who deals with us, whether you're an out of compact generator, an in compact generator, operator of the site, or just an interested stakeholder. This is probably an issue that touches all of our lives in one way or another. So we are absolutely open to hearing everyone's thoughts on it. We want to be methodical and well thought out in this because we know that these decisions may have real impacts on people. This isn't, this isn't a throwaway decision. So we will be very thorough and, like I said, methodical in doing it. So please feel free to contact us, and we may be reaching out to some of you and talking about this issue. So please don't be surprised if you hear from us on this because we want to get it right, and I think it's in everybody's interest to get it right. So with that, we are through with item 9 on the agenda. I was gonna let.
Can I ask a question on
Sure, absolutely.
So first of all, thank you for the work that you've been doing on this. The 70-30 split from a statutory standpoint, does that apply to the license capacity or does it apply to the as-built capacity?
Boy, I wish I knew the answer to that question.
That's such an excellent question.
That's a very, very good
We're-
question. And I don't think they're in the statute, it's not clear.
Mhm.
But that is one of the things we are currently wrestling with and trying to determine. And the subset of that 70-30 split is there's also a specific percentage reserved for Vermont. So the same question would apply to that as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, so I will be forthright about this. If that 70-30 split is meant to be for as-built capacity, we've blown way by that. We're not even in the ballpark.
But it seems clear the intent is to assure there's always going to be, actual room for the in-compact needs. So that's apart from the mathematic, and that's the issue you're asking is where Brandon and I were looking at. It's really kind of a law question. It's like, we're starting to delve into this a little bit. I'll say this just popped up in the last week or so. So I kind of did a quick dive into it, and we're looking at that exact question. But real world, making sure our in-compact folks in Vermont Yankee have what they need is real pragmatic answer to it.
Okay, then I'm going to put a little pressure on you, Stephen.
Yeah.
So we've constructed a set of metrics, data that we want in order to build some metrics.
Mhm.
And I think it's time to put as much attention as we can on collecting that data. Because I think those metrics will give us some insight in terms of historical use to predict future needs related to our in-compact generators as well. And I don't know, it's not going to answer the legal question, but it can give us some insight on, how touchy the situation is.
Yeah.
We can have a conversation. We've sent out some data requests. And I've not received responses back to that. I'll have a conversation with you later on where we have not received responses back to some of the data that we need to collect on that.
Okay.
And just for the commissioner's edification, if you look in the packet, very close to the end, there is a new report that WCS has provided us.
Mhm.
And it is confidential, so please don't disclose it to anyone, but it provides to me what is some very critical data about constructed capacity used to date. And that's where I think Commissioner Mundy got his numbers. And there's more data there, but it is entitled a capacity report, and it's on page 140 or 149 of your packets. So if you're interested in this topic, that is a good place to start. And it kind of at least gives you some initial impressions on this issue. And again, it will hopefully be our springboard from which we start tackling these problems. And we appreciate obviously WCS providing us that data, because it's gonna be critical as we move forward. I was gonna move on to the report from Dave Carlson at WCS, but I think he had to step out to take a phone call. So we will go back then to our applications, which is item 5 on the agenda. So we are back to item 5, which is the applications for importation of low-level radioactive waste. Our first one on the agenda is item 5A, which is the import application of Perkin-Elmer. And again, it is in your packet, Commissioner, starting at page 8. And with that, I will turn it over to the chairman of our technical committee and Vice Chairman Salzman.
Good morning.
Morning.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Perkin-Elmer Inc. It was received August 30, 2022, and it's number 1-071-00. In this case, Perkin-Elmer is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have specifically requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C unstable, non-compactable laboratory trash, personal protective equipment, paper, plastic, metal, glassware, nylon mylar bags, and solidified tritiated water. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated November 3, 2022. Perkin-Elmer has requested authorization for 1,000 cubic feet and 1,999 curies. The commission did receive a letter from WCS recommending approval of this application. That was the only comment we received. The applicant has indicated the waste will originate from the state of Massachusetts, which is unaffiliated. And they've requested a 1-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The Technical Committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5A, the application of PerkinElmer for importation? As an aside, and this is jumping back, I know, to something we just discussed, but one of the things that I've just discussed with Vice Chairman Salzman and I've discussed with Commissioner Mundy is we operate a contingent curie program that we've talked about at length, where for certain requests for importation that have a high curie content and that relate to irradiated hardware, we grant those curies on a conditional basis. And by that, it's just simply we conditionally approve the application, but we don't actually approve the shipment until they get ready to ship, because what we found is that oftentimes the curies change, and we were concerned about our statutory cap of 275,000 every year. As this capacity issue becomes more of a front burner issue, we may also institute, and this is just as a forecast from what may be coming, we may also institute a conditional volume program, meaning that as we get close to what we are concerned of as full, we may, if a large volume request comes in, we may conditionally grant those and then do the exact same process that we do with curies, because again, what we've found through the years is someone may come in and ask for 10,000 cubic feet, but by the time they ship, it's 5,000 cubic feet. So we don't want, as we get close to what we think is a limit, we don't want to give away volume until we absolutely have to, because that's really the whole theory of the conditional curie program. And we could do it the same with cubic feet as well. So that's as an aside, just, and this one, and as to not send off any alarm bells, I would not think this kind of application would be subject to that. I don't think 1,000 cubic feet would be something that would trigger that. I would think it'd be more akin to what the limits we've set for curies. So, but I just wanted to mention that before we moved on. So any other questions for the technical committee on item 5A? Hearing none, we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from PerkinElmer Inc., number 1-0371-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is non-compactable laboratory trash, personal protective equipment, paper, plastic, metal, glassware, nylon mylar bags, and solidified tritiated waste. The volume is 1,000 cubic feet. The total radioactivity is 1,999 curies. The waste will originate from Massachusetts, and the agreement will be for a 1-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about the motion to approve the import application represented in item 5A from PerkinElmer? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of PerkinElmer in item 5A, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion passes. With that, we can move on to item 5B, the import application of Energy Solutions. And I will turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Energy Solutions LLC. It was received September 12, 2022, and it's number 1-0372-00. In this case, Energy Solutions is a broker who is a licensed waste processor requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They've requested authorization for Class B and Class C unstable activated metal, dry active waste, dewatered bead resin, filter media, mechanical filters, metal, and soil. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter of correspondence from TCEQ dated November 3, 2022. They have requested authorization for 650 cubic feet and 750 curies. The WCS did submit a letter dated November 2, 2022, recommending approval of this application. That was the only comment we received. They have indicated that the waste will originate from all states except those in the Texas Compact, but including Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. And I would note that any waste from the Northwest, Southwestern, or Rocky Mountain compacts will generally require an export authorization. And to date, they have not provided the export authorizations or the generator authorizations. They have requested a one-year agreement with a termination date of August 31, 2023. Technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5B, the import application of Energy Solutions? Hearing none, we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the import application from Energy Solutions LLC, number 1-0372-00. The waste class is Class B and Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is activated metal, dry active waste, dewatered bead resin, filter media, mechanical filters, metal, and soil. The volume is 650 cubic feet. The total radioactivity is 750 curies. The waste will originate from all states except those in the Texas Compact, but including Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. And the Energy Solutions will be required to provide any necessary export authorizations and generator authorizations in no more than 4 submittals to the Commission administration. And the agreement will terminate the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5B and the motion to approve the import application of Energy Solutions? Any public comment on item 5B? Again, please use the raise your hand function if you're online. Hearing none, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of Energy Solutions represented in item 5B as stated by the Vice Chairman, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We can now move on to item 5C, which is the import application of Phylotechnics. And I will turn it back over to Vice Chairman Salzman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Phylotechnics Limited. It was received October 10, 2022, and it's number 1-0373-00. In this case, Phylotechnics is a broker who's a licensed waste processor requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. And they've requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C unstable domestic sealed sources, special form material, decommissioning sources, dry active waste, instruments and articles, debris, and other discarded radioactive material. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the facility via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated November 3, 2022. They have requested authorization for 600 cubic feet and 500 curies. The commission did receive a letter from WCS dated November 2, 2022, recommending approval of this application. That was the only comment we received. The applicant has indicated the waste will originate from all U.S. states and territories with the exception of Texas and Vermont. And I would note that any waste from the Northwest, Southwestern, or Rocky Mountain compacts will generally require export authorization. To date, those authorizations and generator authorizations have not been provided. And the applicant has indicated the waste to be from small quantity generators, and based on the requested volume, curies, and generator types, the commission concurs so long as any waste from a utility does not come from a nuclear utility. In addition, the applicant has requested an agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5C, the import application of Phylotechnics? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the import application from Philotechnics Limited, number 1-0373-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is domestic sealed sources, special form material, decommissioning sources, dry active waste, instruments and articles, debris, and other discarded radioactive material. The volume is 600 cubic feet. The total radioactivity is 500 curies. The waste will originate from all U.S. states and territories with the exception of Texas and Vermont. And I would note that the applicant will be required to provide the export authorization, any necessary export authorizations, as well as generator authorizations in up to 4 submittal packages to the commission administration. This waste will be considered part of a small quantity generator set aside, and the agreement will be for a period of the remaining portion of this fiscal year with the termination date of August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5C, the import application of Philotechnics, and the motion from the technical committee to approve that application? Any public comment on item 5C? Seeing no hands raised, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of Philotechnics represented in item 5C on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We can now move on to item 5D, which is the import application of XL Energy Prairie Island. And I will turn it back over to our vice chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from XL Energy Prairie Island Nuclear Plant. It was received October 12, 2022. And it's number 1-0374-00. In this case, Prairie Island is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested specific authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C, stable and unstable bead resin, cartridge filters, and dry active waste. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated November 3, 2022. They've requested authorization for 2,500 cubic feet and 500 curies. The commission received a letter from WCS recommending approval of this application. That letter was dated November 2, 2022. There were no other comments received. This waste will originate from the state of Minnesota, which is located in the Midwest Compact and does not require extra authorization. And the applicant has indicated, actually, they indicated the waste would be from a small quantity generator, which obviously the commission does not believe that nuclear power facilities are small quantity generators.
That was my question for you.
Either they mistakenly checked it or I can't really answer. I didn't reach out to find out why. It's just obviously we would not consider that. But they have requested an agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The commission or the technical committee supports approval of this, but does not agree with a small quantity generator set aside. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5D, the import application of XL Energy Prairie Island?
And John, just kind of for public dialogue here, can you discuss the importance of the small quantity generator set aside on our volume, general concept, since we're talking about that issue in general today?
Be happy to. The reason the commission first established the small quantity generator set aside was there are a number of across the United States, there are a number of generators who are don't have the technical capability to send waste directly to the facility. That's part of it. And also, we want to always ensure that particularly for generators that generating these small volumes and small activities, that they always have a home for that waste. Because ultimately it's better from a radiation protection practice. It's better from a safety and security practice. We obviously never, if we can avoid it as a country, we never want to have radioactive material, particularly sealed sources, that are unneeded and unwanted, but don't have a home. So as a way of ensuring or I would say to help prevent that from occurring, we as a commission decided it would be prudent practice to create a set aside, if you will, to ensure that individuals or companies or even brokers who receive materials from these generators always have a place to send that waste. So is that, hopefully that's a reasonable explanation.
Absolutely.
And John, we've seen what appears to be people inadvertently suggesting they're small quantity generators. Is that an issue with our form, or is
It's a checkbox, and I think people sometimes accidentally check it. Perhaps they don't even realize that they have checked it. I don't know that there's an easier way or a better way. I don't think there's a problem with the program itself. I think it's just perhaps people hover over it. You know how you can accidentally click on something and you don't realize it. And I think that perhaps that's what's happening.
I'm looking to see if there's something we can do to make that better.
Are you sure you want to check?
Well,
this
that's
box?
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
But
Any other questions for the technical committee on item 5D? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Excel Energy Prairie Island Nuclear Plant number 1-0374-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is stable and unstable. The waste stream is bead resin, cartridge filters, and dry active waste. The volume is 2,500 cubic feet. The total radioactivity is 500 curies. The waste will originate from the state of Minnesota and does not require export authorization. And the agreement will be for a 1-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on item 5D, the import application of Excel Energy Prairie Island? I see that Dan Shrum had his hand raised. We have pulled him in now to the panel so he can speak on, I assume, something to do with small quantity generators, but I will turn it over to Mr. Shrum.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't impact the vote in any way. But as you were talking about that, there's a difference with the EPA rules and what you're talking about with the small quantity generated radioactive materials or radioactive waste. I wonder if most of these facilities are thinking they're a small quantity EPA generator, which would, if I were filling out the form and didn't know better, I would click that, say, no, we don't produce much hazardous waste at all. It may be it, but just wanted to throw that out there.
That's an important point. Thank you, Dan. And we're going to start calling you he who causes more questions than answers. But
So I actually am familiar with that, with the program that Dan's talking about. UT Austin has some facilities that are considered small quantity generators from the EPA waste perspective.
And so maybe a line on the form that says this is not.
This is not referring to EPA hazardous waste regulations.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
cite to our definition of it.
Yeah.
Though,
Except they can put that.
Maybe
on
we
that
should see-
explanation, most people are not small quantity EPA generators. And I think most nuclear power plants are not small.
I would think the same thing. Yeah.
So when lead.
But it's not, nuclear power plants have not been the only entity to check that box. I would say inadvertently,
Yeah.
but they seem to do it more often than anyone else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shrum.
I will fix that, and Vice Chair, and I will make sure we clarify what that's supposed to be in case we can avoid any confusion on that. Thank you, Dan.
So is there any other public comment on item 5D? Seeing no other hands raised, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion from the technical committee to approve the import application of Xcel Energy Prairie Island represented in item 5D on our agenda. Please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda requires some explanation and maybe a bit of a reset. So I will start off talking about it, then I will turn it over to the vice chairman for a technical committee report. Item 5E is really the pending application of Veolia with us for an import agreement for this fiscal year. As a reminder, another compact raised an issue with us, what's been now maybe 6 months ago, that there was a shipment out of their compact that left without the proper export authorization. We began to investigate that. As we did, we began to work with Aileron and their parent company Veolia. And I will probably say this multiple times, but I think it's important. Veolia has been incredibly forthright, incredibly cooperative. We have with us here today Dwayne McLean, who has been our point of contact, who has provided us every piece of information we've requested. And we have worked very well with them working through this issue. That being said, there was clearly a problem with the documentation that Aileron was submitting to both our commission and to the facility and TCEQ in representing that waste was generated by Aileron when in fact it was generated by a third party. As we begin to ask for information, and like I said, Aileron and Veolia were very forthright about this. It turned out this was more than just a single incident of that. It has lasted for a period of multiple years, and Aileron and Veolia very honestly told us that it was an internal policy that occurred through happenstance and through maybe some bad advice from some of the employees within their organization who are no longer there. We have asked for information that has been provided to everyone. I'll remind everyone, all of that information is confidential. Please don't disclose it to anyone. But we have we have now learned, and Veolia and Aileron have clearly said that there's as many as 47 different shipments that had this violation. Those are listed in the current information that you all have received on a shipment by shipment and generator by generator basis. So it's without a doubt that it is been going on for an extended period and has gone on clearly more than the initial time that we were alerted to. But I believe at this point, and this is open for discussion and debate, I believe we have gathered all the information we need to gather. We have done all the investigation we need to do, and now it's time to make decisions about the current pending application that Aileron has before us. They deserve to know what our decision is going to be, and obviously this has probably a more far-ranging impact on what we're doing other than just this current application, because it's raised some issues about institutional controls that we need to make sure that we're trying to implement, and also being aware of some of these potential issues so we guard against it. Because obviously the fundamental starting point for all this is that we expect people to comply with the law and our rules and other administrative rules, especially as it relates to generators of waste and the required documentation they need to import that waste and dispose of it at the facility. So with that huge reset, I will turn it over to the vice chairman for the technical report on the Aileron application, and then we will open it up for discussion.
Can I add a legal footnote to what you just said before we get to the details?
No, that's fine.
The reason this is important, among many reasons, is there's a federal law, CERCLA, Comprehensive Environmental Response Liability and Compensation Act. CERCLA, that federal law, makes everybody in the chain from beginning to end of generating hazardous materials potentially responsible for it. So this rule is important for compliance with CERCLA, and if there's ever a future need to go back and look at responsibility, this kind of disclosure and tracking is important for that compliance, among others. So
thank you. That's an important point too. So with that, I will turn it over to the technical committee for the technical report on the Aileron application.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Veolia ES Aileron LLC, doing business as Aileron Nuclear Services. That was received July 21, 2022, and it's number 1-0359-00. In this case, Aileron is a broker who is a licensed waste processor requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C unstable sealed sources and dry active waste, and those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated November 8, 2022. Aileron has requested a proposed volume of 2,000 cubic feet and a total radioactivity of 800 curies. And I would note that under item 7 of our review, which basically has the question considered any unresolved violations, complaints, unpaid fees, or past due reports by the applicant, I would note that the applicant has indicated in various correspondence with the commission violations of commission rules with regard to improper attribution of waste, improper completion of various NRC shipping paperwork, failure to obtain and provide required export authorizations from other compacts, and failure to obtain and provide required generator authorizations. The commission has received no comments on this application. The applicant has indicated that the waste will originate from all states and U.S. territories except Texas and Vermont. And I would note that any waste from the Northwest, Southwestern, or Rocky Mountain compacts will generally require an export authorization. To date, the applicant has not provided those export authorizations or generator authorizations. And the applicant has indicated the waste to be from small quantity generators. Based on the requested volume, curies, and generator types, the commission would generally concur with that, so long as none of the waste comes from a utility that includes a nuclear utility. The applicant has indicated requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. And I would be happy to answer any questions at this point, or perhaps the other discussion.
So let me start the discussion, and I hope it is a discussion, because I want to, this is an important issue that everyone needs to comment on, and we're going to allow Mr. McLean, if he wants to come up and speak, have the opportunity to do that too. But I want to make sure we understand what this is not. This is not an allegation that waste that was inappropriate to dispose of at the facility was disposed of. It's not like they slipped in a greater than Class C or a high level waste. It's not like they slipped in a waste that TCEQ has not set as parameters for the type of waste that can be disposed of at the compact waste facility. So there is no issue about, at least in my opinion, about going in and removing waste. There's no issue about a concern, some sort of health safety concern over this. So I want to make sure that as we discuss this, we put it in the correct framework, and don't let there be any insinuation that this is more than what we believe it is. And so what we believe it is that it's simply waste that was disposed of at the compact waste facility without the proper identification of who the generator of the waste was, and flowing from that, also export authorizations, generator authorizations, things like that weren't obtained, which is a requirement. So I want to start the discussion by kind of framing it in that manner. But from there, I really do. I want to open it up to any and everybody who wants to comment. We'll start with the commission, and then we'll move to the public. But I want to open it up and make sure everyone has a chance to speak on this issue if you so choose. So who would like to start?
Just a question.
Sure.
Brandon. My mic is on. Do we want to hear from Veolia first?
If that's what the commission would like, I'm fine with that.
I would.
I want it to be as fluid as you guys want. So let me invite up Dwayne McLean. As I said before, Mr. McLean has been really forthright and responsive to everything we've asked. I appreciate that. It has made this process although it's obviously unfortunate, it's made this process as smooth as we can expect. So with that, we welcome you to our meeting, and we will just open it up to you for some comments.
Thank you, Brandon. And, oh, Dwayne McLean, Veolia Federal Services, Vice President of ESH and QA. I do want to express appreciation to the committee, the commission, that has been very patient and understanding in us gathering all this information over this period of time. I also want to really tell you my commitment from Veolia Federal Services, which is the parent company of Aileron Nuclear Services. So I think that Veolia is extremely committed. I'm personally committed that we get this right. We didn't for many years, our understanding, and of course, you know that now looking at the last submittal, which is still confidential. We also provided on a couple of occasions summaries as we're going along through this. We did also send to the commission all of the corrective actions that we put in place that we believe will prevent this from happening again, regardless of bad decisions by management. Okay. Those corrective actions are all in place. So we believe, and I'm very confident that future shipments under an importation agreement will be done properly in terms of the paperwork. And I believe that they're going to work. We've added a couple more corrective actions since that submission of the corrective action several months back. Those corrective actions include significant oversight from my office at a pretty high frequency and for a period of time until we're very comfortable that this isn't going to happen again. I can't undo what's happened in the past, but I can certainly ensure and commit to this commission that I believe that we can prevent this from happening again.
Thank you. So let me open it up for questions for Mr. McLean, but let me remind everyone, we are treading close to a line to where I don't want Mr. McLean to think that we are asking him to divulge anything that he or his counsel believe is confidential, proprietary, in an open forum. So ask the questions you want to ask, but I will encourage Mr. McLean that if he feels like that may be confidential, that if he needs to check with Mr. Weber, please don't feel bad about doing that. So with that, let's open it up. Did you have some questions, Lisa?
A couple. Thank you for that. And thank you for your participation in this process up to now. Mr. McLean, when did Veolia acquire Aileron?
4 or 5 years ago, Julian, I believe you're on. If you can
Mr. Awa, yeah, he is.
give the date.
And if you would unmute yourself, there you go. And if you would, please state your name for our recording and what your position is with Aileron.
Julian Owak. I am the Radiation Safety Officer and Radioactive Waste Manager for Aileron Nuclear Services. I don't know the exact date that we were put under Veolia, but and I can find that out for you. But it's been a multitude of years now.
Yeah, I think approximately early 2018 or late 2017.
Correct.
In your investigation, why do you believe that the falsification of information was limited to only identification of the attribution of the waste to the right generator?
Well, in my investigation, I believe that it was originally started back in 2014, very limited, just one shipment, I think, in 2014 or maybe two. And then the same in 15, 16, 17. But it continued over the years to happen more often. We saw it peak 2021 and 20. I believe it was a policy that was put in place by previous management at Aileron Nuclear Services. I do believe that those decisions were made because they really didn't have appropriate procedural guidance so that, you follow the procedure, you don't do, necessarily what the manager says, especially
Mhm.
if it's against procedures. So Aileron Nuclear Services has worked very, very hard over the last couple of years in improving their conduct of operations so that people can't usurp procedures. But I think it was a policy to get some waste out early on. I think it grew into a policy that was accepted by everybody, believing that it was okay. And still, up until just a few months ago, I think we lacked procedural guidance.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My question is, why do you believe that the problem was limited only to attribution of the waste to the proper generator? Did you look beyond that at other documentation and other practices for quantifying the activity or any of the other information that is included when waste is shipped?
Yeah. Julian, maybe you can answer why, but I have a response as to, I think, where we are today moving forward. So Julian, limiting to really just the generator authorization forms and export agreements. Can you answer that question?
Yes, so our investigation included a review of all of the shipments that were made and the documentation related to those and the data and the information that was used to have those shipments. So based on the review of all of those shipments, I did not find any further missing information or false information other than the missing export permits or missing generator authorization forms.
And then we also did an independent review late last summer from my office, looking at the same data and came to the same conclusions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. McLean? Sorry, go ahead, Vice Chairman.
If you can answer this question, have any other regulatory agencies reached out to either Veolia or Aileron with regard to this matter?
Yes. So the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection has been involved pretty much since we got the original letter back in March. I have updated the Department of Environmental Protection 4 or 5 occasions. In fact, I briefed them earlier this week on our submittal of the latest information. They have all the summaries of what we submitted in the past. So PADP has worked well with us, and we've ensured that they've maintained updated status on this matter.
Have any of the other compacts reach out to you with regard to the information?
Southwest Compact reached out to us a couple months ago, and we responded to them recently, saying, "Look, we're gonna get through, the Texas Commission issues, and then we'll start answering questions as we can to other compacts."
Thank you.
Commissioner Mundy, did you have, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add, TCQ also received a copy of your submittals to us as well, the Commission on Environmental Quality in Texas.
Yeah, thank you.
Submittals as well.
Commissioner Mundy, did you have questions?
One comment and a couple comments. One, I wanted to sincerely thank you for your personal efforts and candor and your company's candor and effort in responding to this. I will say, just for public consumption, to me, it's a serious problem, very serious problem, but how they've responded, I think, weighs in favor of not ignoring it or dismissing it, but how we view the situation. So I do appreciate that candor. For public consumption, I will say we are an interstate commission created by federal statutes. Statements made to us are governed by federal law. There's a federal statute that makes it a federal crime to make a false statement to this commission. Somebody inadvertently checking the small quantity box on the form, we're not, you can see we're not getting wrapped around the axle about that. Something like this is a problem. How they've responded has been exemplary, and I really, truly appreciate that. We can't ignore it though. But if somebody in the future, if we catch and, it may be a different situation, at least from my perspective of it. So that's just a general advisory to this community dealing with this facility. I've said it before, I'm gonna say again, anybody operating in this space dealing with nuclear waste, radioactive waste, by definition, should be a sophisticated operator, period. You're not dealing with garbage from an apartment dumpster here, folks. So it's serious. Sounds like an lack of training or oversight, whatever it may be, but everybody needs to watch and keep their house in order. So I do wrap it back. I do appreciate y'all's candor in responding to the commission's inquiries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. McLean, I have one question and again, with the caveat that if you can't disclose some of this, please just tell me. But you talk about corrective actions. Can you kind of give us a brief description of what those corrective actions are?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
So we revised our procedures that are associated with what we call our advanced shipment notification. So that ensures that before a generator sends their waste to us for processing and shipment, that export permit has to be in hand before it's shipped to us. That's the way to prevent this from happening again, or part of the way. We also revised our procedures on, it's called a radioactive materials procedure, but it goes through the process on how we generate the forms and what needs to be put together before we import to the compact. We've also added oversight supports. So, for example, I think we're going to do a monthly, we are going to do a monthly review of all the shipments at Aileron from my office. Julian and his team at Aileron are putting in an independent verification of all the paperwork before shipments are imported. Julian, what are some of the others?
The other thing that I would mention is a certification right prior to the shipment that the proper documents were in place. So that's kind of exterior to the shipment review or the peer review. That's kind of a second verification that we have all the documents that we need prior to the shipment leaving here to go to the disposal facility.
Yeah, that's the independent review I mentioned.
And as a constructive matter, looking forward.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
We did retrain everybody on the importation agreements that we've had in the past, as well as the rules that go along with the Texas Compact Commission.
Okay. Thank you. And so as a constructive matter, kind of looking forward, do you have any suggestions for us on how we can ensure that, not necessarily Aileron, but how we can ensure that something like this doesn't happen again from our end?
To detect these kinds of things takes a hard look inward from the facility, but a lot of times issues like this, I know in my experience in 32 years in the nuclear business, you have to look at it from a different set of eyes. So there has to be some level of independent oversight. So nobody asks for audits, okay? But I don't know if the commission does something like that from time to time, goes out and takes a look at, randomly, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year, taking a look at some of the importation agreement owners and what they're doing in their facilities. I think the process that started all this with the communications from the commission and all that, I thought are well done. We understood what you were looking for. It just took us a while to get there, and then I do appreciate the patience from the commission on us dealing with this matter from Julie and his staff, and also from my office. But I didn't ask for an audit.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. McLean before we let him? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your consideration today.
Absolutely. So let me open it back up to any comments from commissioners now. We will open it up for public comment here in a moment as well, but any other comments from commissioners about this issue? Commissioner Edwards.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dwayne. I guess my read of the situation is that Veolia has been very cooperative and forthright with the investigation of this matter. And that's very much appreciated. That said, the facts are that Aileron has intentionally and systematically falsified information and violated what I believe are the terms and conditions of the contract for imports over an 8-year period. And this is really not just an oversight, it was policy, and it served the expedience of shipping material when in fact the material did not have the proper documentation. And because of that, consequence is called for. And how we handle this calls into question not just their trustworthiness, but it is also a message to anyone else who ships waste to the great state of Texas for disposal here on our land, that we need to be able to trust the documentation associated with any radioactive waste sent to this state. So consequences called for, and I think it's up to each commissioner, and I hope this discussion helps each commissioner to determine what that penalty should be. After consideration, part of me would consider this bad enough to warrant a very long period of denied access, perhaps even permanent, because of the length of time that it went on. And I understand that it may seem like a little lie to say just the generator was wrong, but in fact, the waste itself was properly described. I think that when it comes to documenting information, there is no such thing as a little infraction. Little infractions that happen once lead to it happen twice, lead to it 3, 4, 47 times, and eventually to other pieces of information. All of that, though, is tempered because of the forthright discussion with Veolia, the way that Dwayne has not obscured the information and been quite, I would say, fall on your sword, bringing forward all of the information going back multiple years, which takes considerable effort to provide. And I wouldn't want to have been in your seat responding to these questions. And that pervasive actions appear to be put into place to prevent this behavior going forward. So I've wrestled with this for a long time. My personal recommendation, unless one of you changes my mind, is that we should have a 1 to 2 year period of denied access beginning with this meeting or whenever we make the decision. So it would not include the last 6 months where no shipments have been made while this was being investigated. And that once imports were approved again, that there would be a probationary period that would require Aileron or Veolia to provide documentation of additional oversight verifying that the statements and the information provided with their manifesting and imports is accurate. So it would not be just a single shipper or certified shipper signing the paperwork, but in fact, Veolia or Aileron would take additional action to have a management oversight, and they put their signature on the line that says that they have verified it's correct. So that is sort of, after I've thought about this long and hard, what I think is correct. This isn't anywhere close to a lifetime ban, but it is significant enough to cause pain to any business that's in the business of processing waste for other people. But I think it's appropriate given the totality of the circumstances. I think it protects the commission's reputation. It sends a clear message to other generators and our public stakeholders. And those public stakeholders were foremost in my mind when I came up or reached this recommendation. The citizens of Texas are allowing the import of radioactive waste into our state for disposal. It's not a guarantee, it's not a right, it is a privilege that our state allows this. And we are, I think, responsible to our stakeholders to make sure that proper oversight is done on our part to, when something like this happens, institute appropriate consequences for it.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, absolutely.
So I found the additional corrective actions listed in the submittal that we gave to you. So you talked about some of those additional actions that we're adding. Waste compact requirements are focused QA surveillances to monitor the effectiveness of corrective actions. Documented monthly reviews of all shipping activities. And then again, that'll come from my office. Quarterly reporting to the commission, consistent with the agreement condition F. So we will send a quarterly report regardless if there's issues or not. And we will do that for 12 months or however long we need to. Again, corporate ESH and Q review and approval of those quarterly reports. So they won't necessarily come out of my office, but we will sign on to those as well, those quarterly reports. And again, we talked about the independent verification of all shipments before they come.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? But let me reframe the issue quickly so we kind of know what our options are here. The current matter before us is the request for an import authorization agreement for the fiscal year that began September 1st and ends August 31st of 2023. That's the only matter before us. Based on legal advice and based on the obvious kind of structure of how we operate, our options, as I see them, are approve that import request, deny that import request, approve that import request with conditions, which we often do. There's no number of times we've approved things with conditions. I guess we could that kind of sets, I believe, the parameters on what we can do. As to how we will vote or handle future requests for import agreements, I think is going to be up to whoever's on the commission at that time, whoever, depending on what additional information we've received, however the wind blows at that point, we will address it as future import requests come up. But I believe those are kind of our three generalized options. I want to make sure that before we move to any kind of motion on this topic, I want to make sure that everybody has all of their questions answered, and that if anyone in the public wants to make a comment, I want to give them the opportunity to do that, because this is the first time we have addressed an issue like this. This is something that, again, we've been pretty methodical about, and it has taken an extended period, which in retrospect, I totally understand now. I would have never guessed it would have taken this long, but I am glad we have been methodical the way we have. And I believe it was the appropriate way to handle it. But with that being said, I want to make sure everyone's questions are answered. I want to make sure the public has an opportunity to comment on it. So if anyone online would like to comment, or please use the raise your hand function. Or if anybody else has any questions here or would like to speak here, please just let us know.
It'd be helpful if I could explain the limitations in our importation rule for the members of the commission and the public. I'm happy to do that, if that would be helpful.
Again, the issue is we have limited authority and limited jurisdiction, but all we have the right to do, we can't prospectively punish anyone. We do not have the ability to go out and do anything. I mean, obviously, we don't have the ability to fine anyone. We don't have the ability to issue any kind of edict other than vote on the things before us. And that's the reason that all we have before us currently is the current import request from Aileron, and we have the right to take action on that. And again, this doesn't preordain what our future action will be on future requests. If it's the will of this body in the future, we may approve future requests, we may deny them, we may put conditions on them. And so all of what Commissioner Edwards said is clearly a possibility as we move forward, if and when we decide to approve any request for importation from Aileron. But we cannot prospectively ban anyone longer than the period that would be covered by their current import request.
Why is that?
Because that's the limits of the law.
Are there bylaws or rules where?
Yes, they're in our
could-
statutes.
So do we need to propose a change to the statute that allows us to impose penalties if certain conditions aren't met. I don't know what the legal ease would be, but between you and Jeff, we could probably come up with it.
It has been a topic that was discussed during our sunset process, that the limits on our authorities and our abilities to enforce our rules, what was discussed. As part of my testimony to the Sunset Commission, I raised that issue again. Currently, there's no proposal out there. But I think that is something that we can obviously look further into. I will say this, knowing that we're about to go into a legislative session, trying to think of how to say this correctly. We will not have, if something like that occurred in this legislative session, it would likely not be effective until January of
September 1.
or depending on how the legislation's passed, it could be effective as of September of 2023.
Yeah, I think that our choices are clear as you outlined for today. But I'd like to have different choices in the future. So we have a lobbyist, right? We pay a lot.
We do not have a lobbyist. We have an intergovernmental relations person
Yeah.
who provides education to elected officials.
Okay, intergovernmental relations person. Thank you for the right terminology. So
Let me give the contra point on that. And I'm not saying I agree with either, but I want to make sure everyone understands. Part of the theory on this is that the members of this commission could change. The winds in general may change. We may have different feelings. So to bind someone to a multi-year issue may be binding future commissions that don't agree with what that action is. So in banning them, if the issue is approval or denial of a pending import application, and that, as we have said in our rules, is for a fiscal year that we have set, then that really only that decision only binds the current commission. And so part of the theory is that, again, if in the next fiscal year they come before us and we feel the same, our feelings have changed, whatever it is, we can take whatever action we deem appropriate at that point as well. But so if you approve or deny today's the petition pending before us today, it doesn't necessarily dictate how you act when the next petition comes up, and you can do the same or you can do different. And the theory there is that if the commission completely turns over, or there's just a different feeling or mood, or the industry has fleshed out something that we feel impacts our decision, we don't have to say, well, we've already made the decision on that over a multi-year period. So those are the two competing issues, I think.
I would frame the issue a little differently. We can accept or deny an application for import on all sorts of reasons. You know, the paperwork wasn't right. The permits weren't yet achieved, or we are pushing up against limits, right? That there's not enough capacity. That's like a decision based upon current conditions on the ground. This is in response to falsification of information. It's like kind of sending somebody to jail. We're imposing a penalty period. And when we send folks to jail, we don't say, I'll tell you what, you go to jail this year, and a year from now, I'll decide if you need to do another year or another 2 years or another 3 years, and subject them year after year to whatever the, folks are thinking at that time.
And we're delving quickly into legal issues. And so let me correct you on one thing. We have no criminal penalty authority. We are not acting as a criminal enforcement
I
body.
don't think she was saying that.
But my point is that from an administrative standpoint, it is a fundamental difference in that we do not have any penalty authority. We have absolutely not.
So what I'm suggesting is that we investigate what it would take to provide us penalty authority for future circumstances that hopefully will not arise, but may.
Okay, I understand that.
Mr. Pratt,
I'm sorry.
stand up for a while.
Peter, I'm sorry. We are not ignoring you.
No rush. Taking your point that we have no penalty authority. But if we did, then presumably there'd be a range of penalties. We'd be talking about fines, suspensions, prosecutions, or alternatively, we'd be referring to the things to the Attorney General's office. But I'm just wondering, supposing we really felt that a crime had been committed, forget about Aileron, but somewhere in our processes, how would we deal with that now? By reporting it to the AG for further action? I mean, I can't believe we just avert our eyes from it.
And so there's probably a multitude of places we could report that, anywhere from the NRC to our state attorney general, to the US attorney, even our local district attorney here in Travis County could potentially prosecute violations of the various levels of law that could be either at the state, federal, or I guess even presumably local level. I will let Commissioner Mundy talk about his efforts in that regard if he wants to. But obviously, again, this is, I don't mean to delve into the legal aspects too much. They have prosecutorial discretion to decide what they prosecute. All we can do is raise the issue, and then they make the decision whether or not to move forward. And the issue has been raised with some authorities, and to my knowledge, no one has made any decision to prosecute the matter in any way other than letting us do what we think is appropriate with the pending application. And Commissioner Mundy, do you want to add to that at all?
Only very generalized comment. I've looked at that legal question, and the short answer is it depends. If it's a potential violation of federal law, then it would be reported to federal entities for enforcement action. If it's a violation of Texas state law, would be referred to Texas state entities for enforcement action. And beyond that, I think the rest is work product that the commissioner and I looking at these issues. So I'll just leave it at that. But I echo what he said. I think the view right now is this is an administrative matter for us to take action and deal with it, not some other entity beyond us.
Does that answer your question, Peter?
Yes.
So I think Commissioner Sadek also has his hand up, so I want to call on him now.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that I disagree with Lisa. My feeling is that, number one, they've now had this delayed for a fair amount of time. They certainly did come through and were forthright about all the problems. We've sent out a signal now that we take this seriously. And I would think that would be a warning for the future, not simply for Aileron, but for other applicants. And my feeling is that we should move on. I think it's been thoroughly vetted, and everybody gets everybody understands where we stand, and that people who make these kinds of who raise these kinds of problems in the future are forewarned. So my inclination would be to at this point to grant what's pending before us and move on.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Vice Chairman Salzman.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I want to thank Mr. McLean for the information that Yoli has provided. I appreciate that very much, and the thoroughness. I find myself in a difficult position. I'm the technical guy, but what bothers me is that it's the trust, and unfortunately, you've lost my trust at this point. And it's sort of like when you're dealing with your children, right? You know, it's difficult, right? You want to trust your kids, but at some point they do something and you lose trust in them, and you know, they sort of have to figure that relationship back out again. And that's sort of where I find myself. You mentioned it, and actually I was already thinking about it, the word audit. And I would some of my commissioners may realize or remember this, but others are new and don't. But we've had issues before, and one of the actions that this commission took was to send out a team, if you will, a group of people to audit a facility, and to some people would refer to it as probably trust but verify, if you will. But I think perhaps that is something that we should consider, is sending out a team of people, whoever that might consist of, to audit the facility and to look at what the information that you've provided, talk to the people at the facility, review actual records of training and things like that, and perhaps use that before this commission were to come to a decision one way or the other on the matter before us. So I'll offer that as a thought. Perhaps others want to discuss it more.
Thank you, John. Again, any other comments from the public or any other commissioners? I made a mistake when we started today, which for those of you who attend regularly know that's a common occurrence. I forgot to introduce our AG representative today. It is Kara Holsinger. She is filling in for Melissa. I think, Kara, you now know why Melissa had a conflict today. But I will, the reason I brought you into the discussion, Kara, is I want to make sure I state this correctly from a Robert's Rules of Order perspective. The floor can now be open for a motion. Anyone can make the motion they want to make. That motion can then be subject to an amendment. The way I understand it is the maker of the motion can either agree to that amendment or cannot agree to that amendment. There can be competing motions made, but we have to bring it to a conclusion via the motion process. What the range of motions I believe can be is, like we said, approve the pending application, deny the pending application, or something in between. Things like John has suggested, with maybe a deferral on making a decision pending an audit, or if we want to simply put conditions on the approval of the application, we can do that. But to make sure has some order to it and we don't have 8 different motions, I guess the question is generally speaking, on applications, we take motions from the technical committee. So is that the correct place to start at this point?
Chairman Hurley, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to fill in for Melissa today. I think she had a real conflict, not an imaginary one.
Okay.
I believe everything you said is well stated. Watching your process, the process seems to be that you take a motion from the committee if the committee has one. So if the committee is coming forth with a motion, that is the appropriate place to start. I have not heard from Mr. Salzman whether the committee has a motion on this matter. If they do not, then you could call for a motion from your commission generally.
Okay, that's a good point. I'm
Before we
sorry.
get there, can I read the rules out loud to
Sure.
the other commissioners and the public, that are at least relevant rules for
Absolutely.
consideration? I'm looking at 31 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 675. I'm sorry, I keep taking classes on and off. I got trifocal, so I'm giving it the up and down, but it's 31 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 675, Subchapter B, Rule 675.23, which is importation of waste from a non-party generator for disposal, i.e. an import application like we're dealing with. Subpart A lays out our policy considerations, and this will be important in just a moment. One of the other sections I'm gonna read. It is the policy of the commission, one, to promote health, safety, and welfare of the citizens and environment of Texas and Vermont. Two, limit the number of facilities needed to effectively, efficiently, and economically manage low-level radioactive waste. Three, distribute the cost, benefits, and obligations among the party states. Four, refuse to allow the importation of low-level radioactive waste of international origin for disposal at the compact facility. I'm jumping down to subpart J, which decision by the commission, this is subpart J of the same chapter and rule. No earlier than 35 days after application is posted, no later than 100 days after it's received, commission shall take one of the following actions on the application for a proposed importation agreement in whole or in part, approve the proposed agreement. Next, deny the proposed agreement. Next, approve the proposed agreement subject to terms and conditions as determined by the commission. Next, or request additional information needed for a decision, period. The commission's decision to approve in whole or in part, deny, or approve subject to terms and conditions is final without the filing of a motion for rehearing, period. However, after a commission has acted on an applicant's proposed importation agreement, an applicant immediately may file another application. The commission, period. The commission may deny an application for any of the following reasons. There's 4 listed. These are the 4 reasons. Number 1, lack of current or anticipated capacity beyond that required by the party state generators, semicolon. 2, the waste destined for the facility is not in accord with the license issued by TCEQ to the compact facility, semicolon. 3, the shipment potentially contains waste of international origin as defined in Texas Health and Safety Code, section 401.2005, subpart 9, semicolon, or for any other relevant issue, period. K, terms and conditions. The commission may include any terms or conditions in the import agreement reasonably related to furthering the policy and purpose of the compact holding, any policy and purpose of the compact, including, but not limited to, the policies referenced in subsection A above of this section, period. So those are our relevant rules.
Thank you.
Or some of them.
So with that rule in mind, and with the advice of our council, let me ask the technical committee and its chairman, Vice Chairman Salzman, if you have a proposed motion or if you have no recommendation at this time. And you know what? Actually, we've been going for about an hour and a half. And so to give John a minute to think about that, let's take a 10-minute break. The time is 11:35. So let's try to be back by about 11:45, if that's okay with everyone. And then we'll try to wrap this issue up and get through the rest of our agenda. So we will be back on the record at 11:45. Thank you all very much for coming back. It's now 11:52 a.m. and we are back from our break. When we left off, we had turned the floor over to the chairman of the technical committee, our vice chairman, for a motion, and I will turn it back over to him once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After careful consideration and much soul searching, I make a motion that we deny the application from Veolia, Aileron. I would make a suggestion, and that is that the commission perform an audit of the facility, and based on the results of that audit, a report be written, provided to the commissioners, and then the results of that audit could be used by the commission in any future applications that Veolia, Aileron would submit to this commission.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
There's a motion and a second. Again, let me open the floor to any discussion, any questions, any amendments to that motion that anyone on the commission would like to make.
So I'll just add a comment, and the reason I made that motion was I think Veolia Aileron does deserve a decision about the item they have before this commission, and so that will answer that question. But I also would want you to know that doesn't prevent you from providing a future import application. And I think the results of that audit can help this commission better understand the actions that your company has taken and perhaps help win some of that trust back.
Any further discussion or amendment or suggestion to the pending motion? Commissioner Mundy.
Asking a question for benefit of my neighbor here. On your audit, would you envision that being a cost taxed against Aileron to cover if there's travel expense, things like that?
Be honest with you, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on that issue. I think that's something that as a commission, we'd have to decide.
Well, and that may be a question of whether or not we could even do that.
I don't know if we can, and then I don't know if we.
That's why I didn't include anything like that.
There you go. All
I-
right. So for now, we'll leave that unanswered.
I believe we have adequate capacity in the budget if we need to pay for
Okay.
it, but we will look into that.
Okay.
Commissioner Sodick, did you have your hand up? And you're on mute, by the way.
I guess I want to know what the practical effect of denying the petition is with regard to Aileron. I mean, does that simply mean that they have to find some other place to put this waste, or do they just kind of store it until we're done with whatever we're going to do, or do they come back and make another application? How does that work?
It is a quick reminder about the rule Jeff just read. They can make a new application anytime they want. And obviously, I think, and I'm not speaking on behalf of John, but I think obviously, depending on what the outcome of the audit is, if the audit has a positive finding and the report back is that there's a firm belief that things have been fixed, that may have an impact on what the will of this body is, and they may approve the next petition for import. So I think in answer to your question is, obviously, Aileron and Veolia can do with their waste whatever they decide and whatever's appropriate for them. So I don't know that I can speak to that, but they clearly can reapply at what they deem to be the appropriate time. And again, I think the outcome of the audit and the process of the audit may have a big impact on when that's appropriate and what action we may take. But any other questions or comments or?
Chairman Hurley, may I clarify what the motion is that's on the floor? Is the motion to deny the application, period?
Yes,
That is,
with the suggestion of the audit to be done as early as possible. And obviously, again, this is our rules, and this is Robert's Rules of Order too. If in fact we vote to approve this, that denial can be reevaluated or reconsidered based on the motion of any one of our commissioners. So if, however that works, at a future meeting, if some commissioner comes back and says, hey, I saw the results of the audit, I think we should reconsider that denial. I believe that would be appropriate as well, or a new application could be filed, as we just discussed. And so does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
The suggestion of the conduct of an audit, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly, is a suggestion for the commission's consideration or perhaps a direction to the commission to take care of that. It is not part of the motion.
that is correct.
Okay. Then I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment? Commissioner Edwards?
For me, one vote, what I would say is that the results of the audit be of primary interest to me prior to approving import license or import approval in the future, but not until a year has passed.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion currently pending? Any public comment on, I'm sorry, Commissioner Bradford, go ahead.
I'll support the motion. I also agree, though, that we should be seeking some kind of civil penalty capability to with regard to our own powers in the future, that there are arrows missing from that quiver at the moment.
Thank you. That's well stated. Any public comment on the motion? And again, please use the raise your hand function if you're online. Seeing none, we'll do this a little differently. We're going to do a roll call vote to make sure the record is very clear on this. So
My apologies, Chairman Hurley, if I missed it. Was there a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, there wasn't. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
No, there was.
Lisa.
I'm sorry, Lisa seconded it.
We may not have been able to hear it. Thanks.
I'm sorry. I didn't remember it, so I'm glad you brought it up. So there's been a motion by the technical committee. It's been seconded by Commissioner Edwards. We will now do a roll call vote. And we will just simply go down the line. So I will call you out your name and please indicate whether or not you vote to approve or vote to not approve the pending motion. So I'll start with
Let's be.
I will be for the motion, nay will be against the motion. So I'll start with the Vice Chairman, Vice Chairman Salzman,
Aye.
Commissioner Nyack,
Aye.
Commissioner Mundy,
Aye.
Commissioner Morris,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Aye.
Commissioner Sodick,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradford.
Aye.
Please show the chair voting in the affirmative as well. And with that, we have unanimous passage. The pending application of Veolia is denied. Thank you all very much for your participation. I think we have more work to do as we've described, and I think it's going to be a productive process. So I appreciate everybody's participation and cooperation with this. So thank you both. Thank you all very much.
We'll get back to them about that.
And as we develop the idea of the audit, we will obviously discuss it with all the relevant parties. So please expect to hear from all of us. With that, we are through with item 5 on our agenda. We can move on to item 6, which are the applications for exportation from our 2 nuclear power facilities. The first one is the export request. And as a quick reminder before I delve into this, export issues are authorizations, not agreements. With importation, it is an agreement. With export, it is an authorization. So that means it does not take the counter signature or a contractual agreement with the party requesting it. So the first request for export authorization is from Comanche Peak, and I will turn it over to the Vice Chairman for a quick description of this.
The technical committee has received an export request from Comanche Peak Power Company, LLC. That request, I'll just summarize it, is to have authorization to export waste through the end of this fiscal year, which would be August 31, 2023. They've requested authority for up to 5,000 cubic feet and 1 curie of radioactivity. It is Class A waste, and obviously based on those numbers, it is very low activity Class A waste. The material would be going to the Energy Solutions facility, Bear Creek facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and with the eventual disposal of that material at the Clive facility in Utah. The reason that Comanche Peak is asking for this is actually it's to allow them in case the compact facility is unable or unwilling to accept Class A waste for a period of 14 consecutive days. So in essence, what they're asking for is some assurance that if for some reason the WS facility cannot take their Class A waste, that they would be able to seek export of that waste so that it doesn't build up in the facility. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Mundy.
I would point out two things. One, see the attached letter that goes with this. And in the second paragraph, and when you make your motion, John, I would ask you to include.
Actually, we haven't done one of these in so long.
I think it's still a
It's
motion.
still a motion. Okay.
Yeah, we did it last year, and this is their contingency plan if something goes
Okay.
wrong, and they kind of are tracking our contingency language. The second paragraph in their letter that accompanies the application, and I'll read it, and maybe you can just say, I adopt what they said, whatever, but we would export Class A low-level radioactive waste only in the event that the operator of the compact waste facility is either unable or unwilling to accept Class A low-level radioactive waste, period. In that event, and upon giving written notice via email to the chair of contingency committee and executive director of the compact commission, we would be authorized to export waste without delay under the terms of the commission's order. Further, we propose that such export authority would cease upon the commission's determination the compact waste facility is ready, willing, and able to resume receipt of Class A low-level radioactive waste.
So as a reminder, this issue has been discussed as part of our contingency planning. So this is very much in line with everything we've said in that contingency planning, and may very well be fixed in the future by rule. So I think this is 100% on par with what we've discussed before. So
Concur.
with that, is there any other comments before we move on to a motion? I think we can move on to a motion then.
I make a motion that we approve the export application from Comanche Peak. I'll get their name correct. Comanche Peak Power Company, LLC. It would be for up to 5,000 cubic feet, one radioactivity or one curie of radioactivity. It's Class A waste. And the destination would be Energy Solutions LLC, Bear Creek facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with final disposal at the facility in Clive. And I'll adopt the language. I'm not going to try to repeat that. And this agreement or this export authorization would terminate August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion about the export authorization request of Comanche Peak? Any public comment on item 6A? Hearing none, we'll move on to a vote. All in favor of approving the export authorization request of Comanche Peak represented in item 6A in our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We can now move on to item 6B, which is the export authorization request of STP Nuclear. And I'll turn it back over to the vice chairman. If you just want to say ditto, you can, I think.
It's actually their request is slightly different. The technical committee has received and reviewed an export application from STP Nuclear Operating Company. In this case, they requested authorization from September 1, 2022 through August 31, 2023. The volume is 5,000 cubic feet. The total radioactivity in this case is 0.5 curies. In similar fashion, the material would be for Class A waste, and it would be going to the Energy Solutions Bear Creek facility with eventual disposal at the facility in Clive, Utah. And the reasoning is essentially the same as it was for Comanche Peak. This is really only as a stopgap measure if for some reason the WCS facility were unable to take their Class A waste. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee?
Why, maybe the applicants can answer this for me. Why are they requesting it for just a half curie for something like this? I'd be more inclined to give them a little more room so they aren't stringing themselves if this really kicked into gear, 10 or 20 or, I appreciate y'all trying to do the least you can, but I don't want y'all getting hung up if
It's based on historical.
Yeah.
Time we would get a situation where we could export, pay off and all of that. So it's-
Would it help?
We literally can store.
Yeah.
5 20-foot ceiling. 5,000 cubic feet.
Yeah.
That's to the point where we were getting going into an outage. Didn't get rid of 5 minutes. At that point, probably.
Yeah.
We were well below that.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, should we give you 10 just so you're not worrying about, are we under a half or are we 0.6? I mean, to me, it seems like artificially, no, don't worry about it. Okay.
Commissioner Sadick, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I take it is kind of artificial. I mean, I take it that what they're really doing is simply trying to track what they've seen in our rulemaking and it's not, I don't take this as a real life situation. I think they're just trying to pick up some language and deal with it, which is okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't see it as a particular concern. I assume that WCS doesn't have a problem with it, since I haven't heard that they do, which then makes it kind of a no-brainer to send through.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the tech committee before we move on to a motion? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the export application from STP Nuclear Operating Company. And that would be authorization from now through August 31, 2023. The volume would be up to 5,000 cubic feet. The radioactivity is up to 0.5 curies, and the material would be Class A. And it would be headed towards Energy Solutions Bear Creek facility with eventual disposal at the Clive, Utah facility.
With the same conditions we just did for Comanche Peak.
Correct.
That we don't need to read again, hopefully.
Correct.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion in this second. Is there any further discussion about item 6B, the export authorization request of STP Nuclear? Any public comment on item 6B? Hearing none, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the export authorization request of STP Nuclear in item 6B, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you very much. With that, we are through with item 6 on the agenda, and we've already done 7, 8, and 9. So we can now move on to item 10, which is Dave Carlson's report from WCS. So I'll invite him to the podium.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Dave Carlson from WCS. I want to be clear that when I provide oral information to this committee, that's the best available current information. You should consider it draft. It may not have all been subject to internal audit procedures that we would apply to this information. So I provide it to you orally on that basis. So for the current Texas fiscal year, and that would be the months of September and October, the first 2 months of the year, our disposals to date in the compact waste facility are 8,380 cubic feet from in compact and 617 curies in compact. Out of compact, we've disposed of 8,889 cubic feet and 5,766 curies. Our totals through October of 2022 are 270,000 cubic feet, which is 3% of the licensed capacity, or about 60% of our currently constructed capacity. In terms of the total curies, that's about 540,000 curies decayed, which is 25% of the licensed capacity. So one thing I don't normally do is talk a little bit about the decay of what's going into the facility, but let me do that just briefly today. Our top 5 radionuclides are 99% of what goes into that compact waste facility, and our top radionuclide of all is cobalt-60. Cobalt 60 has a 5.3-year half-life, which means the cobalt 60, the quantity of cobalt 60 is half of what it was after 5.3 years, or after 10 half-lives, which in that case would be 53 years, it's about 0.1% of the original concentration. So cobalt 60 goes away very quickly, makes up about 45% of our inventory. The next radionuclide we deal with is iron 55. Iron 55 has a 2.7-year half-life, so a much shorter half-life. So basically, if you're looking at 27 years, you're going to be down to 0.1% of what you started with that particular radionuclide. Our longest lived radionuclide that's in the top 5 for us, that's in that 99%, is nickel 63. Nickel 63 has a 100-year half-life. So again, after about 1,000 years, down to 0.1% of that nickel 63. It's also interesting that nickel 63 is a beta emitter. So it's a radionuclide which does not emit a significant gamma and which therefore doesn't require significant shielding. The last 2 radionuclides in our top group are tritium, which is about 7% of inventory with a 12.3-year half-life, and cesium-137, which is about 2% of inventory in the compact waste facility with about a 30-year half-life. So the reason for me saying this is just as a reminder that the things that we put into the compact waste facility decay away quickly in terms of both looking at radioactive lives of radionuclides, but also looking at the design life of our facility. The design life of our facility is obviously many multiples of that. And in fact, we run our performance assessment out to 1 million years. So these timeframes are nowhere in that range. You're talking a few hundred years for the primary radionuclides that go into the facility. In terms of constructed capacity, we still have 450,000 cubic feet of constructed capacity, which is about 5% of our licensed capacity. So both have plenty of current constructed capacity and licensed capacity. In terms of payments that we've made, we just made a payment for the June to August 22 period, paid about $2.5 million to TCEQ for that quarter, about $865,000 to Andrews County for that quarter, bringing the totals up to about 71 million for TCEQ, about 16 million for Andrews County, for a grand total of 87 million in surcharges. And again, surcharges are on top of normal taxes and fees that we would be paying. Any questions?
In the meeting in Andrews, we approved one application for 80,000 cubic feet. I want to say it was from Mississippi or Kansas. I just can't recall off the cuff, but my memory was it was 12 shipments that were quote ready to go or something. Do you have any updates on, are they going to really ship that here? Or what's the status of that?
80,000 cubic feet or 80,000
Yes, sir.
carries?
That 80,000 cubic foot load.
Yeah, if I remember right, and I can.
I didn't look it up.
Talking about the Entergy one?
I can't remember who the applicant was. I want to say it was Mississippi or Kansas was the point of origin.
Was that 80,000 feet or was it 80,000 curies?
Well, we had one for
feet.
80,000 cubic feet.
Yeah,
I think that was, let's see, 0350, which was Holtec or HDI from their 3 sites, referred to irradiated hardware. But I think that the 80,000 cubic feet is very much greater than any amount that will reasonably be shipped. And certainly we're not seeing any numbers close to that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no way they have 80,000 cubic feet of irradiated hardware.
Yeah, I just.
No.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sodick, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have handed over about $71 million to TCEQ. Do you know what they do with that money?
They spend it all wisely.
It's a very good response.
It goes into a couple of different accounts. So there's one account that is used for radioactive waste cleanups around the state of Texas. Has nothing to do with us really, but it tends to clean up uranium mines and things like that, where the where the owners of those mines did not have sufficient financial assurances in place to do that themselves. Some of it goes into the general fund of the state of Texas, and some of that money that I referred to goes into account that is actually there for the operations of the Compact Commission.
Right. Yeah, that's what I understand too.
Mr. Carlson, clarification that 539,000 decayed curies, is that coming out of your Gold Sim model data?
So the actual current inventory comes out of Elite, which is our site management system, which accounts for every manifest that comes into the facility. When it comes in the gate, we would record the radionuclides coming in and the quantities of those radionuclides, and then we would decay that in Elite on a shipment by shipment, radionuclide by radionuclide basis, so that we always maintain a current inventory. So the inventory, when we run a performance assessment, we would run the current inventory against the performance assessment, but the PA itself, the Gold Sim model, does not keep track of that inventory. That's done in Elite.
And I was confused about this for a long time. That calculation is mathematical. It is not a reading assessment where you go out and actually take a radioactive. It is truly reduced to a mathematical formula.
That's absolutely correct. So it's based on the manifest documents when the waste actually comes in through the gate.
Any other questions for Mr. I'm sorry. Any other questions for Mr. Carlson? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we are through with item 10 on our agenda, and we are now on to item 11, which is the chairman's report. As I am wont to do, I'm going to put Dan Schrum on the spot, and hopefully he doesn't get mad, but I wanted to make sure everyone knew about the next meeting of the forum and where it's going to be. So Dan, if you could provide us that information.
Oh, do you want that now, or are we gonna have Stephen speak first?
No, I was gonna let you just give us the info of where the forum is going to be.
Oh, absolutely. The next meeting will be in Charleston, South Carolina. And there will be a tour of the Barnwell facility on March 21st. The meeting will be on March 22nd and 23rd at the Francis Marion Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina. And then the Disused Source Working Group will be on the 24th of March.
And commissioners, we will forward that information in an email too, so you can have it and with a link to the sign up. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks.
I'll also provide a brief legislative update. As we all know, we're about to go into our legislative session here in Texas, which will start in January, last through the end of May. As we've already kind of discussed here in today's meeting, there might be some things that we need to talk to our elected officials about related to our authority and possible enforcement and penalty authorizations that we may think we need, but we will look into that. Otherwise, and Stephen will talk about this more, but otherwise, there are no what I would call substantive recommendations that have come out of the sunset process that we just recently went through. So we do not expect any substantive changes in the way we operate based on a sunset bill at this point. But that's always subject to change as well. So we will watch that carefully, and we will keep everyone updated as the legislative session starts. And I will talk about this as we get to it, but obviously the start of legislative session also puts premium in this space in this building at a premium. So we may need to find alternate locations to meet during the legislative session, but we will talk about that when we get to that item, which is 13. Last part of my report, based on our need to make a decision about the renewal of our lease and some other, what we have simply referred to as operational issues, we have created a new committee. And I have asked Commissioner Nyack to chair it. And before she could say no, we made her sign it in blood. So she doesn't know any better yet, but she'll find out later that she might want to rethink her agreement. But it will be the administration committee. As I said, Commissioner Nyack will chair it. It will handle everything from an operational standpoint, from things like leases to employment issues to employee reviews. She will also handle any kind of other that committee will also handle any other kind of operational issues that come up, and they are at times they are significant and take up a lot of time. So we appreciate her willingness to do that. We will also identify the remainder of the committee probably in the next couple of weeks. I wanted to make sure that Simona was okay with it first, and now that I know she is, we'll fill out the rest of the committee. But any operational issues that come up, commissioners, that you think need some sort of review or need some sort of determination, we will now direct those to this committee and Commissioner Nyack. So with that, that concludes the chairman's report, and we can move on to item 12, which is executive director's report.
So the first thing on the agenda for the executive director's report is number one, the Sunset Commission. They did meet last week here in Austin, matter of fact, right upstairs, and voted just to, as their recommendation on a bill related to us for the Sunset Review is only to have us reviewed again in 2035 with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality when they should be up for their review as well. Other than that, there were no recommendation changes related to the commission. We did ask them, as Chairman Hurley pointed out earlier, a suggestion in our sunset self-evaluation that penalties provisions might be a good thing to be added to our commission. That was not taken up by the Sunset Commission. But if we want to revisit that, that can be a discussion to have with the legislature about whether to have those penalties provisions or some sort of penalties authority being provided to us. But that would probably be separate from our sunset bill. But other than that, it was pretty uneventful last week as relates to our sunset review. But if you have any questions about that, be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Go forward on sunset.
Any questions for Stephen on the sunset?
The second item, which is now going to be Commissioner Nyack's issue, is our office space. Our office space contract is up at the end of February of next year. We're looking at trying to find new space or maybe possibly renewing at the space that we're at, but we're going to work on that with Commissioner Nyack and try and find some alternatives. And if you have any suggestions as to what we should do in regards to that space, as far as cost savings or what changes would need to be made, obviously Meg and I are more than happy to listen to that, and Commissioner Nyack will be addressing that issue.
And I should have said this, the operations committee, we will name other commissioners to it, but obviously the ex officio members of that committee are Megan and Stephen. So just so they're on the record that they're on the hook too, I wanted to let them know that. Any other questions for Stephen? Okay. With that, we can move on to our final item. And this is one that actually normally we blow right by, but we're going to have a minor discussion about this based on what I said earlier. Our future meetings. Currently, we don't have meetings during the holidays for obvious reasons. Our next meeting is January 26th that we have listed here in Austin. In the early part of the legislative session, generally rooms are still available because the committees aren't in full swing. And so if we want to, we can probably meet here at the Capitol. The next meeting is April 6th, and we have that listed as TBD for a couple of reasons. One, it's the middle of legislative session. There might be a reason that we need to be at the Capitol if we have a legislative issue and we want to be present and have members be able to interact with their elected officials. There's also a reason that we may want to not have it here if it's too crowded or things are going on. So we've left that as TBD. Obviously, as we have said, every meeting we've ever had, we will never meet just for the sake of meeting. There may be good reason to cancel one or both of those meetings. Then after that, the next meeting is June 15th. Again, same rationale, and that's also listed in Austin, which would be after the legislative session. One of the things I realize, and I want to make this clear, is if any commissioners have problems with these meeting dates, they're always flexible. I mean, we don't want to change them at the last minute. People make travel plans, but if anyone goes back and says, I'm going to be out of town and I'd really like to attend that meeting, please feel free to contact me or Stephen, and we can move dates. And we can, the way we communicate with people is through our AWeber system that blasts out an email, so we can change dates to everyone. The other issue to consider is we always say that we like to take our show on the road occasionally. We have discussed potentially going to the Houston area to potentially go to a tour of the South Texas project. We in the past have gone to the DFW area, again, under the theory of just making ourselves available to a different constituency that may want to attend, who can't get to Austin and want to be in person in front of us. So if anyone has any ideas about that or thoughts, please, again, feel free to share them with Stephen or I, and we can start that communication process and decide if we want to take the show on the road. Any questions about future meetings?
Do we have a planned date for going to WCS?
Yeah, so we initially at one point thought maybe that April 6th meeting, that's still to be TBD, just like it says. But clearly we will go back. It's just a matter of when. And so if people have opinions about that, again, let us know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the April would be perfect having Andrews. I think it was good chance for the community. I know it's cold.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah, it's cold, but it's not as bitter than ours, but you know, the legislature will be in session. So if there's something we need to hear from the community.
Yeah.
You know, I think then we could pass it back to our contacts. So I think there's reason to meet there while the legislature's in session in case we need to hear something from the community.
Okay.
Well, we'll visit with Commissioner, and I actually, she plays host whenever we go to Andrews. So we can make work for a meeting in Andrews. Next year, we'll have that conversation and get back to you as she looks at what's available in Andrews too.
Okay. And obviously, long term, at some point, we will be going back to Vermont too. It'll generally be in the fall at some point, September, October. So that's the extreme long range planning. Any other questions about future meetings or scheduling or anything? Hearing none, I think that means we're through with item 13 and we are now to our final item. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you all very much.